Hello and welcome back to the Cartoonist Studio. Well, you've been very patient. You haven't complained. You've hardly moaned at all. You've been very good children, so I'm going to reward you. You've been asking, or you do enjoy the when I draw the "What if I drew ... and then another cartoon." So that's what we're doing this week. And there's been many suggestions on what I could do, and I do want to get to them all. But this time, the idea popped into my head, so I thought, right, I know I need to do one of these cartoons. And because this idea popped into my head, I thought, I'm going to do that. It's another personal favourite of mine. I'm going to be drawing BC. That's it. We're doing What If I Drew ... BC. I've already done the Wizard of Id, and you can find that in the playlist and also on my various, the actual list of all my videos anyway. But if I'm clever, we know that's not necessarily a foregone conclusion. There will be a link for the Wizard of Id video in the description below. There'll also be a link for the playlist that has the Wizard of Id, Andy Capp, Hagar the Horrible, and Calvin Hobbes, the ones I've already attacked. So this is it. Today we're doing BC, one of my all-time favourites. I love BC. So without further ado, should we go ahead and do that? Yes, let's do that. Well, here we go. I mean, I know it's been a while since I've done one of these What If I Drew. I'm so sorry, but things just seem to have got away from me. Anyway, we're here now, and I'm going to be doing BC, as I mentioned in the introduction. Now, for those of you who have followed previous videos, you'll know that when my parents finally decided that, yeah, I was going to become a cartoonist and there was nothing they could do about it, my dad said, if you're going to learn how to be a cartoonist, he said, learn from the best. And so he went out and got me a Peanuts book, which was brilliant. And I just poured over it, read it from cover to cover to cover to cover. I never stopped. And this went on for a while. I sort of saw a few more things, and I copied them, and I started sort of trying to do my own things. And then one day, Dad came home and he said, remember I told you, he said, if you want to be a cartoonist, you have to learn from the best. And I said, yes. And he said, well, I was right. He said, I've got a new one for you. And he gave me this book. I think it was called Hey BC or something like that. It was one of the BC books. It should be up around the top of the screen somewhere. And I said, I'd never heard of it. And he said, someone bought one of them into work today. And he said, they're brilliant. He said, Peanuts is good and Peanuts is clever. He said, but this guy is so funny. So you want to be funny, he said, you've got to be like BC. And so that was what I did. I got the book and I read it, and he was right. They were simply drawn. I mean, very simply drawn, but deceptively simply drawn. They were so smooth, and there was action without there being action. It was so strange. I've never seen anything like it, but I was absolutely fascinated. So anyway, when it came to doing this cartoon strip, like I said, I was trying to come up with ideas for other cartoon strips, and this idea just popped into my head. And it was when I thought of the idea, I thought it was just such a BC idea. I can't describe it. It's one of those things you can't describe the feeling of air. You know, you can't touch a color, that kind of thing. It's that thing that you can't explain. You can't explain away. I just wrote it. I thought that's just a BC idea, and I hope you think or feel the same way. So then, but the reason I thought it was my favourite character, of all the BC characters was Grog. I like Grog for the same reason that my favourite Marvel character was always the Hulk, because they were just so simple and they were so true and they were so honest. There was never anything sinister or hidden or underlying with these two characters. It was quite simple. Hulk smashed and Grog grogged. He was just a brilliant character, and I always thought it was always the frustrating thing for me. I wish there were more Grog cartoons, but I guess he was a being a fairly one-dimensional character, there was only a certain amount of things that he could do. So I love Grog, and I love the Fat Broad as well. Just a great character, just a solidly strong character. I had nothing wrong with any of the other characters in there. BC seemed to be, to me, a kind of a non-entity of a character. Peter was the inventor of the wheel. Thor, sorry, was the inventor of the wheel. Peter with all of his various business ideas and science and medicine and what have you. Clumsy Carp, Willie with his wooden leg. And of course, all the other characters, all the myriad of characters. They were just absolutely brilliant. So anyway, enough about that. That was my passion. That was my love. That was my enjoyment. The enjoyment that Johnny Hart gave my life at that time was just incalculable. Peanuts got me started in cartooning and taught me an awful lot of the nuts and bolts. But Johnny Hart made me want to be funny. Peanuts was a lot of things, but it wasn't always necessarily funny. It was more clever and made good points. And it was funny at times, but generally it was more of those sort of things when you'd say, "Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Oh yeah, I get what you mean." Whereas Johnny Hart just made you laugh, not all the time, but a lot of the time, and his characters were funny as well. And he himself, apparently, according to a few sources that I've sort of read about, was not necessarily a funny person, but liked to laugh and would come up with something silly and daft and what have you. And there was a story once. I think he was being, the name of the magazine he was being interviewed for, Hogan's Alley. That's right, a magazine called Hogan's Alley. And the guy went up to his home in Nineveh, and he 250 acres of land, of which I think a 50-acre lake sat in the middle, and his studio was on the one side. It was like a 2-story studio, and he had like a piano in there, a drum kit, 2 pool tables for some reason, and a bar, which is quite strange because he didn't used to drink in the end. He was a hellraiser when he was younger, but then he became very, very, very religious, extremely religious, probably even more so than Schultz did. And but he had this like massive window. You just look out onto this lake. I mean, God, I can't even begin to imagine how beautiful that must have been, how calming and peaceful and inspiring. It's no wonder BC was such an amazingly written cartoon. That was what you had to look out on every day. But anyway, this interviewer came along to talk to him, and Johnny Hart liked to talk. He loved to talk. And like I said, the interview went on for a while. And the guy said, "Look, I've got to leave." And Johnny Hart said, "I haven't finished yet." He said, "I've got this. Could be back in." It was like I can't remember when he was staying. About an hour's flight or something like that. And so Johnny Hart thought for a couple of seconds, picked up the phone, rang someone, and said, "Okay, it's all sorted." He said, "A limo's come to pick you up. It's going to drive you home." 4-hour drive in a limo. And Johnny Hart booked this limousine to take him home, just so as he could continue with the interview, which he did, and it got done, and the guy got a lift home in a limousine, all paid for by Johnny Hart. Brilliant. Okay, right, the cartoon. We should talk a little bit about the cartoon, shouldn't we? Now, I drew this little bit here. I got, obviously Grog's going to be saying Grog right above him in a minute, and I didn't like it. And I realised what I'd done was I was trying very hard to draw like Johnny Hart did. And although I tried to make the cartoons like the cartoons that I am portraying, I still had to give it a little bit of my own feel. And my own thing, of course, is action. So now, when I drew Thor next, he was still Thor, but he was Thor drawn the way that I would have drawn him if I had been lucky enough to have created the cartoon BC. So this is what you get now. You're getting more of the action now and the facial expression, because the other thing about when Grog went Grog, he'd either flip people over, just like they used to do in Peanuts, or he'd shock them, or their hair would be all over the place, or Willie's wooden leg would fly off, all that kind of stuff. He was a great visual humorist. So I decided to give it a little bit more of a visual look. And that comes out here in the action. I also noticed that when he drew his fingers, they were so simple. I don't know whether he was a good artist or not. I don't know, but his images were very, very simple. So like, here we go. So now I've got the one leg coming up. I think I may change that foot. I loved his feet as well. These ridiculously long feet. I've no idea where that came from, but they're just in themselves. When I drew them, it's when you draw them yourself. I advise anyone to go out there and have a crack at doing a picture themselves of someone else's drawing, and actually just draw it. Even if you just copy it the way that they've done it, you get a feel for the fun that they must have had doing it, because his feet are just funny. They make you feel happy when you draw them. So yeah, anyhow, there you go. I told you I redrew his foot. So yeah, so there you go. So when coming up with this cartoon, like I said, like I did with the Wizard of Id, my favourite character there was Bung, followed by the King, and I managed to get both of those characters in there along with the Wizard. And I think I did that because I thought, oh, you must have the Wizard in there because it's the Wizard of Id. And here I am drawing BC, and I haven't got BC in it. But like I said, BC seemed to be a kind of like a Charlie Brown. He wasn't really, he was the main character, but he was there as a kind of a gap between the really interesting one. Well, I thought the really interesting ones. Maybe got it slightly differently, I don't know. Now here's a way to do lettering if doing it large. Just write it big, straight out, just space it, and then you can go around and give it the sort of edges and whatever. Just a little trick, you know what I mean? I've written it in single line, so I know where it goes. Now I can go around it and I can thicken the lines. Takes me back to the days when I used to be a sign writer. It's how you used to make sure that you'd spaced those letters correctly on the board or the placard or whatever it is you were sign writing. And also do some little action lines around there, because the word grog seems to bounce in the air. It seems to sort of excite and titillate all the atoms in the air. Do you like that? Right, now in the last panel, I thought about it when I was laying it out on a piece of paper. I mean, when I talk about laying it out, I am talking about just a few lines, no drawing, just a placement, stick men, that kind of thing. And I played with this a few times. Did I have grog there? I thought, no, there's absolutely no point in having grog there. I could have had him there, like in the first panel, with his little like a ping pong bat thing that some traffic policeman had, just waving him on. But no, I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do him my way. I'm just going to have it with Thor standing there. I think it gives more impact for when he says what he says. Right, now, we'll be going on to the inking soon, which will just give you to a little bit of music and enjoyment. But once again, thanks for coming along. I hope you've enjoyed this little trip into the world of BC, and you've enjoyed my little ramblings and a little story. And I hope you'll come back for the next one. And so like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, all those sort of things. And keep coming back. That's the most important thing. Keep on coming back and share it around all your social medias and Facebooks and things. It helps in ways that you cannot even begin to calculate. But before I go, there's one more little story. And this is a strange one, and I don't really understand it. But when I was drawing the cartoon, I felt an immense feeling of sadness, almost like loneliness. And it was, I can't describe it. I kept thinking about Johnny Hart, and it's almost like I wanted him to be in the room with me whilst I was drawing it. I mean, I know he wasn't and everything like that, but that's how it felt. It felt really, really strange. And yeah, it was just a very odd feeling. Anyway, enough on that. It's a little bit morbid, but that's how I felt. But like I say, hope you enjoyed the cartoon. And I hope you come back for the rest of the ones that I do. So any comments, leave them in the comments section below, and I'll see you on the next one. And until then, thanks very much, and bye-bye for now. Okay, right, so now we're on to the inking section of the cartoon. Now, over the years, as most of you will know, my preferred method of inking is with a brush. I can use a dip pen. I've used it many times, and I did do a video where I drew Lord and Lady Hamlet. One I drew with a brush, the other I drew with a dip pen, which you can find by going through my back catalogue if you like. And at the moment, my preferred method is with a brush. Now, the pen I normally use, if I do use a dip pen, is the Gilliatt 303 nib. Now, that's been used a fair bit, as you can see by all the black ink around it. But I'm not going to be using that, because over the years, I'm going to give this new set of pens a road test, if you like. Over the years, I've bought a lot of materials, and have bought materials for me. Pens, pencils, brushes, everything you can imagine. But I got bought these set of pens. Now, they go marketed as the cartoonist pen. I suspect they're mainly for manga, but I don't know. So there's a whole range of pens here. Now, traditionally, that is the mapping pen used by a lot of cartoonists to do their inking. Not going to be using that. And then you come through this, which is a slightly larger mapping pen, but I'd say it's kind of a mapping pen, but not a mapping pen, if you get what I'm coming at. So we go from that one. So we'll keep that one to the one side, and we'll keep that one to the one side at the moment, because these two here, I would say, are lettering pens. One for the normal lettering and one for the slightly bolder. So we'll put those to the one side just for now. And we leave ourselves with these two. The mapping type pen, and this one, which I'd refer to as a kind of a crossover. You could use it for both. Now, when I looked at Johnny Hart's inking, because although I wanted to do it sort of with my own feel, the cartoon with my own feel, I wanted to make it still look like a BC cartoon, a Johnny Hart cartoon. So I looked at the cartoons in the books that I've got. I noticed that his lines are just a little bit thicker than you would normally have with other cartoonists. So I would say that, and I road tested on a couple of drawings and put the two together, and I thought that, you know what, it's the in-between one, the crossover, what I call a crossover pen. That is going to be the perfect one for what I need. So that's what I'm going to use. It doesn't have a number, so I can't help you. But what I can say is I'm using Daler Rowney heavyweight smooth, what's it called? Yeah, smooth heavyweight cartridge paper, run about £200. So that's the paper I'm using. I also use Winsor & Newton. God, I should get paid for this. I'm using Winsor & Newton Black India ink. That's what I use all the time now. I've tried a variety of them, and that's what I've settled on. So that's the technical side of it. Now let's go and ink a cartoon. Should we do that? Yes, let's do that.